This is Upside Down in the Middle of Nowhere, chapter 32 and 33. She stepped out of the dark of the bus's belly, and I'm sure enough it was Denisha, and my eyes filled with tears. Denisha, what? Where? I know, cuz. And she wrapped her thick arms around me and Kayla. That's it, the stupid bus driver said. I want y'all off my bus. Go on, get off. And Denisha took hold of my hand, and tears sprung to her eyes. I lost Bugger. I don't know what happened. Charlie brought us here, and she glanced out a window towards the dome. Something happened, Armani, something really bad. 30 seconds, the trifling bus driver said, and a fat tear slowly made its way down Denisha's cheek and dropped to the floor. My mama was attacked last night. They beat down Charlie, and Bugger took off running. She rubbed up under her nose. The next thing I know, she's gone because I'd been looking for him ever since, and he was standing right next to me. Maybe he's with your mom or Charlie. I wanted to tell her about Daddy and Georgie, but I didn't have the energy for it, and the driver tapped her watch with one finger. Look, I don't want to leave without Bugger and my mama anyhow, she sniffed loud. Take my seat, and then when y'all have three, then y'all have three. Denisha's lip swelled up and started to quiver. But Denisha, you can't stay here. It's dangerous. You have to come with us. And I turned to the driver. Please let us all stay on. This is my cousin, and these are my sisters. And yeah, and I'm your long-lost mama. And the evil driver snickered at her own bad joke. Time's up. Time's up. Someone I don't know who gets off. I don't care who, but someone gets off now. People outside the bus were screaming and shouting almost as much as the ones inside the bus. I'm going to count to three, then I'm going to throw all of you off the bus. 1, 2, and Denisha smiled a lopsided smile and hugged me again. She squeezed past me and glared at the driver until the mean woman's good sense told her to move her leg before my second cousin moved it for her. Denisha walked back toward the steps to the door. Keep your eye out for Bugger, here? I will. Celie wrapped herself around one of Denisha's legs so tight I thought she was going to knock her down, and then my little sister looked up at my cousin with tears running like a river down her face. Find your mama and tell her where we are, and Daddy and Georgie. Denisha took one more backward step down the stupid drive, and the stupid driver slapped the folding door shut right in her face, and Celie scooched past me and flung herself across the laps of three old ladies sitting in a seat. She stuck her head out the open bus window and shouted, Find Mama. She'll take care of you. Thank you, Denisha. And as the bus rolled away from that awful place, all I could see was the long, dark walk lying out in front of me. Another cinder block took up space inside my crowded chest, and I slowly started making my way down that long, narrow aisle, putting one clumpy boot in front of the other, searching and praying for an empty seat through blurry eyes, and having a feeling of dread spread through my body like fever as I headed further and further to the back of the stinky, hot, shadowy bus. With all that was left on my family clinging to me, making it so I could hardly breathe. Chapter 33. The bus rolled along slow as molasses, and my head rested up against the cool glass of the window, and Celie pulled out her swirly green and white journal and the matted-looking feather pen. She stared for the longest time at the blank pages in front of her with her pen froze between her dirty fingers, and all I could think just then was how mad Mama would be that Celie had dirt up under her nails. She'd have me leaning over the tub scrubbing those with a little blue nail brush when Celie took her bath, and the smell of lavender soap floated up in my nose. Armani, Celie said, staring at the blank pages. What's a refugee? A lady fanning herself holding two snotty, sick-looking babies on her lap in the seat across the aisle from us said without even turning her head or glancing in our direction, We are, baby. You, me, all of us. We are the refugees, cast from our homes. Celia looked at me and said in a quivery, quiet voice, Armani? And I just said quiet and pressed my nose into the top of Kayla's head and took a deep sniff, and the lavender smells were gone for good. Celia closed her journal and put it back in her book sack. Ain't y'all gonna write in there? No, I don't feel like it, Celia sighed, and she zipped up the sack and let it sit in a bob between us on the seat. I never in my life rode on a school bus that was so spooky and quiet except for the sniffling and coughs and mumbles, and one old lady up front wailed and prayed, and she was crying for all of us. We rode like that for a long while, zigzagging down the chunks of tore-up interstate with police cars, one in front and one in back of the bus, flashing their lights, and all creeping along, slower than a slug, dragging me further and further away from home. And when I seen outside my window how New Orleans was all but worn away from being touched by that storm, I sat with my head bouncing up and against the window and watched the sky turn from orangey blue or bluey orange to patches of gray and snakeberry red. Hurricanes must not reach all the way to the sun because it was moving across the sky just like it always did, like nothing happened at all. My eyelids puffed up and wouldn't stay open, and when most of the orange was gone from the sky and it was almost completely chalkboard black, I seen the reflection of a girl I didn't recognize in the glass window. I turned my head to see if she was sitting behind me, but I only seen Celie, who sat with her face turned away with Kayla's head rested on her shoulder, and I looked back at the window, and there she was again. The girl with the frizzy, lopsided head and swelled up eyes, and my heart thumped in the side of my head, and I was fixing to check behind me one more time when I noticed the girl in the window mirror turning her head too. And I froze solid. The girl I didn't recognize was me. And I rubbed my eyes and forced them wide open, and I moved in closer to the window till me and the reflection in the glass were all but touching noses. And a tear inched down the face of the girl in the glass, and a tear holding the color of orange from the sky outside. And with every little bit, the tear moved down the face in the window, and I could feel all the blocks sitting up inside my chest, every single one of them. At the same time they turned to dust, the dust pile they made settled down into the very bottom part of my belly, and the heavy feeling I'd been carrying around up in my chest was gone, and it felt empty. And when the teardrop finally slid from the facing glass, wetness fell on the top of my hand. I slowly tore my droopy eyes from the window mirror and stared down for the longest time at the way the tear just sat there, and I wondered if my hands would ever get a chance to be old or as soft as Mima's. Celie's eyes were on me, and I didn't care, and I picked up her book sack and unzipped it, and my sister didn't say a word, and I found the fat, crinkled-up Bible Celie had fished out of the black, nasty water still wrapped in Mr. Oscar Dupree's bandana. I pulled it out, zipped the bag up, and put it in a nice pile between me and my sister, and I slowly lifted my head and looked up at Celie. She was staring with her mouth half open and her lips quivering something terrible. Want to sit next to the window? My voice sounded groggy, like I'd just woke up, and I blinked one long slow blink. Celie shrugged, never taking her eyes off my face, and I stood up with back against the seat in front of us and looked down at her half-awake baby sister. Are you sure, Armani? You always liked sitting by the window. Not no more. It was impossible to keep my heavy eyelids open. She scooted over, dragging Kayla with her, and I sat down on my new spot and gently pushed Kayla's head down on the leg and went to rubbing her sticky forehead. I ain't sure how long Celie sat looking at me, but I tucked the smelly, used to be waterlogged book all wrapped in red up under my arm, and I closed my eyes and went to sleep. We'll do chapter 34 too. Chapter 34. The shelter. Soldiers stood guard outside the bus and in front of the doors of the building where we were being told to go into long guns in their arms, just waiting to be used. I ain't sure if the soldiers were there to keep the bad people from going in or keep the people from going out, and I kept my head down and my mouth shut, trying best to ignore the screaming blisters up inside my muddy boots. As soon as everyone piled off the bus, people in red vests shuffled all of us into the lines with signs of overhead reading intake, and we got in the line that didn't move, and we stepped maybe one whole inch forward every hour, and I wanted to sit on the floor like belly aching Kayla, who scooted forward on her butt whenever the line moved forward. The smell of sweat and boiled beans was thick in the air, and my empty stomach went sour. Noise, hollering, loudspeakers, crying babies, the scraping of metal, cots dragging against the hard, shiny floor. Every sound in that place echoed off the concrete walls with no windows in the sky-high ceilings, and bright yellowy fluorescence flickered and lit up everything, shining too much light on the confusion everywhere. It was like the hurricane had brought its chaos up inside the building to shake us up some more, just in case we hadn't had enough already. There was commotion at the front of our line, and two kids holding hands caught my eye, and the smaller kid was fussing, and the older one was a huge, flat afro, was arguing with a tall man in a red vest with the hair the same tacky color as his orange shoes. I'm going to ask you one more time, the orange-haired man said, the older kid. Are you with an adult or not? I held my breath waiting for the older kid to answer. Armani? Celia tugged my arm. Shh, not now, Celia. I never took my eyes off the afro kid and the orange-haired man. The kid turned and looked at the fussy boy standing next to him, and I knew the answer to the man's question. People on our line were hollering for the kid to hurry up and answer, and I slipped my hands over Kayla's ears on account of all the cussing up there, and the orange-haired man speaking into a walkie-talkie. He finally looked at the older kid again. Step over there, please, and he waved, showing the boys where to stand. My heart was beating faster, and my head was starting to buzz like the overhead lights. I've been watching people for hours getting to the front of that stupid line, and they jabber for a bit with the man in his ugly red vest and handed a trash bag and paper with the word rules printed on it big on the top, and then walk over to the other hundreds of one of the other hundred of lines in the overcrowded crazy place, and every single one of them went somewhere except them two kids. My insides started shaking, and the two kids stepped off the side like the man told them to, and the little kid was hanging tight to the older one. The older kid turned for a long second, and we seen each other. He looked right at me with his scrunched up mad self, and he lifted his chin in a nod just enough so he could tell that I needed it. Hey, I needed a hey back. The line moved an inch. Kayla scooched forward, and my eyes were still locked on the kid. Out of nowhere came a lady who didn't look like she belonged in that dreadful place at all, and she was wearing a red vest, but it looked part of her outfit the way she wore it. Her long, dangly red apple earrings were the same color as the vest, and she had red accessories stuck up in her praline tinted wig that was piled on top of her pointy head. I wasn't the only one staring at her. Truth is, the person couldn't help but stare. She was shiny and clean and all done up and looking like a brown Marge Simpson on her way to Mardi Gras parade, and all I could smell the soap on her even from where I was standing. And she was just a smiling and went right up to the two scared-looking boys. Armani, Celia tugged again. Hang on, girl. I shrugged off my arm, and I squinted my eyes and put all focus on my ears, tilting my right ear in the direction of the kids and the shiny lady. My, the shiny lady said in one of them high-pitched, sugary sweet voices, set aside from what Mima used to calls the hate-fallen types. Highfalutin types, sorry. What do we have here? Her smile was plastered on in a way that reminded me of the kind nurse. It reminded me of the kind a nurse wears right before she shoves a long needle in your arm. The older kid took to staring at the floor, and the little one went and hid behind him. The orange-haired man barely looked at the shiny lady when he said in his walkie-talkie, 2 unchaperoned minors, Child Protective Services dispatched, and my legs were shaking like full of mudskill and jelly. Well, alrighty then, the shiny lady said. I don't know how words rolled out of her shining mouth when it didn't even look like her lips were budged. The line moved an inch, and Kayla scooched forward, and the shiny lady reached out like she was going to touch the older boy's afro, but she took a quick step back and, you need to let us be. I'm 15 years old, man. We don't need anybody. We can take care of ourselves. Oh, darling, it's going to be just fine, the shiny, highfalutin lady said. She tipped her head right back on, smiling with her extra large white teeth flashing that way. And come on now. We're going to find us a nice place to rest, and you all get fresh water and something to eat. How's that sound? And the kid poked his head out from behind the older one right when the older kid was trying to glance over at me. And I had to remind myself to breathe, and his nostrils opened and closed real big, and his chest moved up and down fast, and the boy looked like a bull getting ready to charge. We're not going anywhere. That's the end of 34.